Hey, yo, lesson here, babe. You come at the king, you best not miss.
You know, over the past week or so, really the past 4 or 5 months, I have been listening to all the, I don't know if they're left, sometimes even right, for different reasons. Political, I wouldn't say pundits. It's probably the wrong word to use for these particular people, but pundits are actually pros. So the online personalities that have been going back and forth about these elections, and they've been showing MSNBC and CNN and all these other kind of produced shows and pundits and talking heads. They don't really get into the meat of the why, about the politics and the why and the stuff that's on the ground. They very seldom pull out economists or even money people independently, and that stuff is all over the place. They give you a real read on the economy, give you a real read on even the border, give you a real read on the facts on the ground. And I always say the environment always shapes everything. And I don't know whether they haven't been trained to do it or they don't do it, or what have you, because I have been trying to teach people to do this over the past 10 years. And I know the need to be right is what's interfering with them from learning the stuff that I already know. Going through the same process I went through. Because I went through the same process. And there's times that I have been wrong, dead wrong, but things I have been wise enough to admit it and learn from what I was wrong about and why I was wrong. And so what I have been trying to do is shorten the learning curve of learning these processes and learning how to evaluate these processes in these environments and these, human political environments and human economic environments. Because no matter what the situation is, the environment is, they're created by humans, and humans react in certain ways. You can tell. There's certain tells that humans have. So you might not know what the event is or why the event happened, but the thing is, you can see the reaction of these people, the reaction of the entity that either controls it or directs it. And by their reaction, you can kind of peel back and go back and see exactly what direction or what they actually wanted to do. And a lot of times, especially with governments and militaries and even businesses, high-level businesses, they try to mask what they do in secrecy. They try to mask what they do in deception so that you can't get an accurate read on how they operate. But if you read enough and you see enough and you keep track of this stuff enough for a longer period of time, you can actually tell the patterns. And the patterns they're usually the same. I mean, it's always action and reaction. You can usually tell what their aim was by what they do, where they place it, and sometimes, like in COVID, what the intended reaction was. You can tell what it was aimed at. Now, sometimes it goes awry and they make mistakes, and which might, like I say, 9 times out of 10, they'll make a mistake. It won't be perfect. There's very few perfect operations where they actually do something that works out perfectly. It's always messy. They always have to make adjustments, and you can tell what they're getting ready to do by the adjustments. But that's a long-winded way of saying that this political season has taught me that the majority of people, especially online, that are doing this punditry, have no idea what they're talking about. Especially when it comes to Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Anybody with half a brain could have told you exactly what the process was, what was going to happen, and what events that these people were going to have to walk through. Like Donald Trump being on trial and them trying to ruin his reputation was not a mystery to me. In fact, I knew if he came back, that means he's stubborn enough to actually walk through this process. So I knew they were going to hang as much paper on him as they could. And when that errant bullet missed his ear, hit his ear, I knew that it was much more serious than I had originally anticipated. That meant it was much more about an agenda than it was about a party or policy. And as I had been telling people by the reactions and stuff that was going on that was about an agenda, people still didn't believe it. They believed in their policy, they believed in their party, they believed in their team, like I used to believe in my teams, until I saw how the money works, how sausage is made. And then once I knew how the money works and what the objectives were and how the contracts work, then I could accurately predict what my team, my local teams, were actually going to do, how committed they are to winning, what their objectives were in the whole context of competition on the sports arena. Normally, sports are very hard to predict. Very hard to predict moves and trades. But once you get to the insight of the back office, then you get a real good peek on how teams operate. And what the product on the floor is a reflection of the back office deals and the hidden stuff that you can't see. Same thing with politics. Now, people kept telling me that Kamala Harris is leading in the polls and yada, 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 and this kind of stuff, and what should have happened or what shouldn't have happened. As far as the Democratic Party, there's a reason that Joe Biden didn't step down. It's because his work wasn't done. The thing is, if you don't follow the whole picture, not just the domestic picture, but the whole picture, you wouldn't know what the work is, even though he explicitly said it. He said it like multiple times over multiple interviews exactly what his mission was. And the majority of his mission was not domestic. And the people that are backing him, their mission was not domestic. In fact, the domestic policy was sacrificed for the greater good. But most people didn't know that. And most people didn't accept that because they figured that I didn't know what I was talking about because they didn't read it. It wasn't on CNN. It wasn't on the Wall Street Journal. It wasn't the Washington Post. Even when I told people that the polls and the newspapers were lying through their teeth, people don't believe you. Even though if you broaden your scope to what you're looking at politically, just outside your own little bubble, it's very plain that they're lying, that you shouldn't trust them. And you got to look at those polls and those newspaper reports and all the propaganda they're pushing at you with a side eye. The only reason I didn't pick a president is because, as I said, I had no faith in the American people not to eat up their propaganda and act accordingly. Evidently, it wasn't enough propaganda or enough money that was spread out. And maybe there is no amount of money, because at the end of the day, when you go to the grocery store and you buy butter or a quart of milk, you will notice there's no amount of money that's going to change your observable reality. There's no amount of money that's going to change your rent going up. There's no amount of money that's going to change your heating and electric bill going up. There's no amount of money that's going to change that your paycheck doesn't stretch as far as it used to. No amount of money that's going to change the reality that you're one paycheck away from getting evicted. That should have been obvious because everybody, including the people and the pundits, can walk into a store and know that the prices went up. Can go to the gas station and know that the prices went up. Can read any ad in any newspaper about a car and know that the prices of the car have gone up to where most people can't afford one. Told people about the immigration. I told people about the demographics and why they were trying to do certain things with certain people, the local civilians, as we call them. And even the pedestrians had no clue why this stuff was going on, even though you're telling them, even though you show them, even though you put 1 and 1, see, class 1 + 1 = 2, they're going to say, tree, like little kids, because your math is wrong. And now after the test comes back, and they see that they didn't get any of the questions, and they got the big red marker with the sad face on it. You know how it is with the teacher put out the red pen and draw the sad face on your paper. What happened? You weren't right, or you weren't right enough. and you failed the test. Now everybody's making excuses about what could have happened, what would have happened, who's to blame, what segment didn't come out for. Maybe they should have spent more money. Maybe they should have marketed themselves differently. We knew that she was a long shot from the beginning. And when I said she was a long shot from the beginning, everybody argued with me. No, she's a viable candidate. She's strong enough, yada, yada. No, she wasn't. I mean, explain to the forces behind her that twisted these arms to get her in position to run. Well, that's what happens when you talk to pedestrians and civilians. I was listening to BreadTube, and I kind of had low-key respect for BreadTube. They were intelligent, well-spoken, college-educated people. Even people like Kimberly Nicole Foster, a graduate from Harvard. You're connected to these people. You're supposed to have a broad education, be able to have higher intellect to actually be able to evaluate the situation properly. And I found out they're just as dumb and clueless as everybody else. Their lips were red from the Kool-Aid that they drank, just like the people in the ghetto. In fact, the people in the projects had a better, keen sense about the way the vote was going to go than the people at the top. They did, because they were the most affected. But now everybody wants to make excuses how they weren't really wrong. At least I can say something about Paradox. Paradox admitted that he was lied to. He admitted all the polls, all the articles, all the people, the pundits on CNN, MSNBC were lying, or at the very least, sadly mistaken. He's the only one that actually come out and actually admitted the actual fact about how he took in what he thought was accurate information and found out it wasn't accurate. And he did crash out about it, which I commend him for. And the people that came at me, yelling at me, hollering at me that I was wrong and I was this, that, and the third, and I didn't know what I was talking about. Basically, now they're trying to make excuses. But as Salty tells me, that's what I get for talking to pedestrians and civilians. Because 9 times out of 10, they have no clue about what the hell they're talking about. And the vast majority of stuff that they say is wrong. Because they act like they're bubble kids, bubble wrap kids, just like their candidate. Bubble wrap, that's why I call it DJ Bubble Wrap. And no matter how right you are, how correct you are, because I don't believe in being right, I believe in being accurate. No matter how accurate you are, they're still going to come back to say the next day that you have no clue about what you're talking about, even though you just showed them. Showed them in their face, showed them directly in their face, and told them that what they were looking at was improbable. How can a party that was at 30 or below a 39% approval rating jump up to a 54, 55% approval rating, 57% approval rating? It's impossible. That did not raise a red flag with you? You didn't actually side-eye the polls and side-eye the data, you just accepted it willy-nilly? An unpopular regime in the White House all of a sudden becomes popular because you changed the face? And a face that's unknown? A face that couldn't even get out of a primary in 2019? All those factors, and all of a sudden she's going to be this world beater that's going to take on Donald Trump. And as damaged and wounded as Donald Trump was, trust and believe, Donald Trump was beaten up by that process. His reputation, his energy was all beaten up by that process, and you couldn't beat him. Why? Because you deserve to get fired. You deserve to get run out of office because you governed badly. People that govern badly deserve to lose their job. Just like Donald Trump governed badly when it came to COVID. He deserved to lose his job. That's how come Joe Biden could run in and run the table on it. Donald Trump in 2020 deserved to be replaced. He did. January 6th, he deserved what he got. So when he came back and kind of went against the silent, probably agreement that the Republicans and the Democrats had with him, he deserved to go through the court process. I didn't feel sorry for Donald Trump. I didn't feel sorry for Donald Trump getting shot at. You wanted to be here. You wanted to walk through all this against better counsel. Now, my hat's off to him that he survived the process and came out victorious. But I never felt sorry for Donald Trump. I never felt any compassion for Donald Trump, no matter what they said about him. Feeling compassion about him, you knew this was coming. As the Democrats should have Well, one Democrat did know that they weren't going to be successful in this process. And shout out to Barack Obama. Even though they made him toe the line, you had to go out and represent, had to go out and fly the flag for the party. You actually knew that this was a lost endeavor from the beginning. That's why he said he wanted to protect the down ballot seats, which they thought the particular other half of the wing thought they could win. And so they rolled the dice on Kamala Harris, and they came up snake eyes. Now you don't only have the presidency that you lost, but also the House and the Senate. So you made a mistake with your card, turned over the wrong card, and then they just ran a Boston on you. Complete sweep. It might not be a mandate, but it's a refusal. I'm trying to find the word for it. When you get old, have all these words in your head, man, you kind of lose track. It's a referendum. That's the word. This was a referendum on failed policies of the Biden administration. That's all this was. Can the Democrats come back and regain their footing? Sure. But all this extraneous crap that most of the people in America don't want, you're going to have to put that to the side and put that on the back burner. You got to get down to the real things that real people need every day, including the people, the marginal people that you claim that you represent. They have to eat too. They have to work too. And they have to put gas in their car or get transportation just like everybody else. They don't live on some island someplace. They have to be part of the American experience just like everybody else. And they have to come to better and brighter and more innovative ways to govern and to manage people and lead this country. And they haven't. But maybe they will. But I just want to say to the civilians out there, to the pedestrians out there, hell, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. But at some point, you guys got to learn. Hell, I'm listening to Bread Tube, or what I call the cornbread tube, and they're crashing out over Kamala Harris, and they can't figure out what happened, how come they were so wrong. Just like on the math test, when you don't know how to do the problem, guess what? You're going to fail miserably. Of course, you're going to have to figure out what happened, because you never learned it in the first place. And that's what I'm having issues with. And I could have gone on a rant and gone in on people that are still trying to make excuses for why they were wrong, instead of going back and evaluating and realizing that what you thought was true wasn't true. What you thought was going to happen had no chance of happening. And this is the only way it could have turned out, short of, jail or death. Let's put it that way. I knew, my patrons knew, and the people around me knew, because I told them and I showed them every step, every single step I showed you. Went up to the chalkboard, got your favorite color chalk, and I drew it out in plain English and diagrams, sometimes with diagrams. Maybe I should start drawing stick figures. Maybe that'll help. Anyhow, man, I've rambled long enough. Shout out to the pedestrians and the civilians.